Welcome back to Ruthless Metal. In today's video we're going to do a top 10 list of the best thrash metal albums of 1990. And with this new decade we saw a decline in popularity for thrash metal. But that hasn't happened just yet. I think that we have 1 or 2 more years before we started to see the quality of the releases go down the drain, so to speak. So 1990 was quite a strong year in my opinion. And as always, we have to establish the rules, so we're only going to include full-length thrash metal albums that were released in 1990. And if you're a fan of thrash metal, then make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, so you won't miss out on the 91 list that is coming up next. But now it's time for the top 10 thrash metal albums of 1990. In 10th place we have Destruction's Cracked Brain, and this album was the band's first since Schmier left the band in the late 80s. And in stepped Andre Kreator from Poltergeist, and he's doing a solid job on this record. And we all know that after Cracked Brain the band released some uninspiring albums, but don't skip this one just because Schmier ain't part of the band no more. And now it's time to spin the song Cracked Brain from the album with the same name. In 9th place we have Canadian thrashers Sacrifice and their album Soldiers of Misfortune. And Sacrifice was a very consistent band, you could more or less buy any of their albums without getting disappointed. And this album seemed to be a bit underrated as well, because not that many people in my Discord voted on this one. But for me this is a top 10 album, so here is Sacrifice with As the World Burns. In 8th place we have Vio-Lence's second studio album, Oppressing the Masses. And their debut album Eternal Nightmare was one of the best debut albums of all time, so it was going to be tough to live up to the hype. And in my opinion they didn't disappoint at all, because Oppressing the Masses was a strong follow-up, even if I hold Eternal Nightmare above it. So here is World in a World by Vio-Lence. In 7th place we have Wisconsin thrashers Morbid and their album Spectrum of Death. And this band just released one album during the heyday of thrash. They did record one more album, but it remained unreleased for a very long time. And this album was very aggressive, even though the album artwork looks like an Iron Maiden album from the 80s or something. So let's spin Assassin now by Morbid Saint. In 6th place we have Slayer with Seasons in the Abyss. And Slayer barely missed the top 10 last time with South of Heaven, but with this record they are back in the top 10 once again. And this album is in my opinion the last truly great Slayer record. Sure, they had some decent ones since this one, but I hold Seasons in the Abyss as one of their best, and it's in my opinion their most accessible album as well. So if I have anyone watching this video that hasn't listened that much to Slayer yet, then I can recommend that you start with this record. So here is War Ensemble by Slayer. In 5th place we have Forbidden's second studio album Twisted into Form. And it's a continuation of the sound from their debut album Forbidden Evil. It's a bit less chaotic this time around, but I think it's equally good. So here is Twisted into Form by Forbidden. In 4th place I've chosen Artillery's third studio album By Inheritance. And this record was produced and engineered by Flemming Rasmussen, whom also worked on Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets by Metallica. So this is a well-produced Danish thrash record of the highest quality, and this is my favorite Scandinavian thrash metal album of all time. So let's spin Comaniac now by Artillery. In third place we have Annihilator's second studio album Neverland, and this record sometimes ends up in the shadow of their brilliant debut album Alice in Hell, but I think that this record is of a similar quality. And their career might have taken a dive after this record, but that's another story. And now it's time to listen to Neverland by Annihilator.
Blacking out, poison, colors now decay. Drifting off to Neverland. Please don't take me away to Neverland. Now, to the Neverland.
In second place we have Kreator's Coma of Souls, and this was the band's last thrash metal album for over a decade. Because they released some industrial sounding metal in the 90s, but this was the end of a long streak of absolutely insanely great thrash albums. And this one has a clean production, and it's their most accessible album from the classic period. So here is People of the Lie by Kreator. And the number one thrash metal album of 1990 is of course Megadeth's Rust in Peace. And this is in my opinion their best album, even though Peace Sells comes pretty close. The musicianship on this album is purely next level. So let's listen to the best thrash metal album of 1990, which is Rust in Peace by Megadeth. And here is my full top 10 list, and there was a lot of cool albums released this year, so I had to leave out some gems this time around as well. And if you're familiar with these videos, I always hold a vote in my Discord so that you guys can vote for your best thrash metal albums. And then we compare the two lists, so that's what we're going to do right now. And you guys chose Megadeth's Rust in Peace as your number one record of 1990. And it was a landslide victory for Rust in Peace that won with over 100 points. So it was the clearest winner so far. and you guys chose Seasons in the Abyss as your number 2. Slightly higher than what I did. And Razor from Canada was 4th on your list with Shotgun Justice. A great in-your-face thrash record that just happened to end up outside my top 10. And you guys also voted in Anthrax and their record Persistence of Time, which was their last great thrash metal album in my opinion, before they changed their sound when John Bush joined the band. So it's Joey Belladonna that sings on this album, and I think it's an overall great pick from you guys. But it ended up just outside the top 10 for me. And a surprise to me was that Kreator's Coma of Souls ended up in 8th place. I thought it was going to be more popular than that, since they are a huge band and Coma of Souls is one of their most recognizable albums. And you guys also chose UK thrasher Xentrix for Whose Advantage, which was the number 11th pick for me, so it's of course a very good album that all fans of thrash metal should check out as well. And as always, we have a long list of honorable mentions like Sodom, Masrow, Tourniquet, Sadus, Demolition Hammer, Exodus, Exorder, Celtic Frost, Sacred Reich, Mekong Delta, to just name a few bands that released cool thrash records in 1990. And don't forget to leave a like, share with a friend and subscribe to the channel if you're a fan of thrash metal, because the top 10 thrash metal albums of 91 is coming up next. And if you want to support my work, you can become a Patreon like these gentlemen right here. Or you could support the channel by grabbing some Ruthless metal merch. I have t-shirts, hoodies and mugs with the Ruthless metal logo on it. But also some old English style logos as well. So check out the Ruthless metal store. And you can find the link to it down in the description below. And that's it folks, thanks for watching, stay heavy, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye bye.